First contact in the frost. The wind howled across Europa Station Outpost 7, carrying ice crystals that sparkled like diamonds in the harsh floodlights. Commander Sarah Chen stood at the observation window, her breath fogging the reinforced glass as she tracked the approaching storm on her neural display. The massive Jupiter loomed in the sky, its swirling bands casting an ethereal glow across the moon's icy surface. "Commander, long-range sensors are picking up an anomaly," Lieutenant Torres reported from his station, about 3 kilometers north of the outpost. "Energy signature doesn't match any known human or Nyx-Terry patterns." Sarah's augmented eyes narrowed, the neural implants automatically adjusting to zoom in on the coordinates Torres had flagged. The Nyx-Terry weren't supposed to be in this sector. The ice moon was firmly in human territory, according to the tentative peace treaty. Yet something was out there, fighting against Europa's perpetual blizzards. "Get me an environmental suit," she ordered, already moving toward the airlock. "And keep this off the official channels for now. Commander, with all due respect, that storm is going to hit in less than 30 minutes. Protocol states." "Protocol also states we investigate all anomalies that could threaten this outpost." Sarah cut him off, her tone brooking no argument. "I'm not risking a full team. I'll go alone." The environmental suit sealed around her with a series of pneumatic hisses, its thermal systems immediately activating to combat the minus 160 degrees Celsius temperatures outside. She'd done this walk 100 times during her 3-year posting, but never in weather like this. The moment she stepped outside, the wind tried to knock her off her feet. She activated her suit's magnetic boots, each step becoming a deliberate act of will against Europa's hostile environment. The neural display overlay a path through the ice fields, marking dangerous crevices and unstable terrain. 20 minutes into her trek, she found the first sign that something was wrong. A trail of bioluminescent fluid glowed faintly in the ice. Nyx-Terry blood. The crystalline aliens didn't bleed like humans, but their life fluid had a distinct cerulean radiance that nothing else in known space could replicate. She followed the trail, her suit's sensors constantly updating with new data. The storm was getting worse, Jupiter's massive bulk now completely obscured by the swirling ice crystals. Sarah's training told her to turn back, to wait out the storm and return with a proper search team. But something pushed her forward: instinct, curiosity, or perhaps something more fundamental to human nature. The source of the anomaly became clear as she crested a ridge. Huddled in the lee of an ice formation was a Nyx-Terry, their crystalline exoskeleton dulled with age, and their usually brilliant internal light barely flickering. Sarah had never seen one this old before. The Nyx-Terry were notoriously private about their elders. "This is Commander Chen." She broadcast on all frequencies, including the few Nyx-Terry channels she knew. "I'm approaching to render assistance." The alien's head turned slowly, faceted eyes reflecting the storm's fury. When it spoke, her suit's translator struggled with the complex harmonics of Nyx-Terry speech. "Leave me, human. I am discarded. This is our way." Sarah's steps faltered for only a moment. "That's not our way," she replied, continuing her approach. The storm was almost upon them now, the wind reaching speeds that would soon make travel impossible. "I'm Commander Sarah Chen of Europa Station Outpost 7, and I'm getting you out of here. You do not understand." The Nyx-Terry's voice resonated with multiple tones of distress. "I have lived beyond my time of usefulness. The colony has judged, and I have accepted." Sarah reached the alien's position, kneeling beside the massive crystalline form. Up close, she could see the intricate patterns of age in the being's exoskeleton, like the rings of an ancient tree. "I understand perfectly. Your people left you here to die. But I'm not leaving you, not in this storm, not ever." The Nyx-Terry's internal light pulsed weakly. "Why? We are not your kind. We have been enemies." "Because that's what humans do," Sarah replied, already calculating how to get them both back to the outpost. "We look at the impossible and do it anyway. We see someone in need and help them, even if they're different, even if it's hard. She extended her hand, the gesture universal enough that even an alien could understand its meaning. I'm Sarah. And you are. There was a long pause, filled only with the howling of the storm. Finally, the alien's crystalline hand reached out to touch hers. I am Kovex, former keeper of historical resonances, and I do not wish to die here. Then let's get you somewhere warm, Sarah said, activating her suit's enhanced strength modes. The storm's almost here, and I have a feeling this is just the beginning of a much longer story. With infinite care, she helped Kovex to their feet. The alien was lighter than expected, their crystalline form seeming to have hollowed with age. Together, they began the arduous journey back to the outpost, fighting against winds that could score metal and temperatures that could freeze air solid. Commander, Taurus's voice crackled through her comm. The storm's hitting harder than predicted. You need to. He stopped as her suit's cameras transmitted what he was seeing. Is that a Nyxteri elder? It is, Sarah confirmed, helping Kovex over a particularly treacherous patch of ice. And we're bringing them in. Get Medical Bay 2 ready. The private one. And Taurus. Let's keep this between us for now. Something tells me the Nyxteri didn't leave one of their elders out here by accident. As they struggled through the worsening storm, Sarah's mind was already racing ahead. Bringing an alien elder into a human outpost would violate at least a dozen protocols. The diplomatic implications alone could restart a war that had only recently ended. But looking at Kovex's weakening bioluminescence, she knew she'd make the same choice again. Sometimes, humanity's greatest strength wasn't in its technology or its determination, but in its simple refusal to walk away from someone in need, even if that someone had crystalline skin and came from a civilization that had tried to destroy them just a few years ago. The storm raged around them as they made their final approach to Outpost 7, but Sarah's smile behind her faceplate. She'd learned long ago that the most important discoveries, the ones that changed everything, often came not from careful planning, but from moments like these, when humanity's heart proved stronger than its fears. The outpost's airlock was already cycling as they approached, a beacon of warmth and hope in Europa's endless winter. And as they stepped inside together, human and Nyxteri, Sarah knew that whatever consequences came from this decision, she had just written the first line of a story that would change both their worlds forever. Breaking protocol. Medical Bay 2 hummed with unfamiliar frequencies as the station's environmental systems struggled to maintain the precise conditions needed for Kovex's crystalline biology. Sarah stood at the observation window, watching the medical team work. They'd never treated a Nyxteri before, let alone one of such advanced age, but human ingenuity had always thrived in impossible situations. Commander Chen, a sharp voice cut through her thoughts. A word. Colonel Victor Harrison stood in the doorway, his weathered face set in hard lines. Sarah had known this confrontation was coming. You couldn't bring an alien elder onto a military outpost without consequences. She followed him to his office, where the massive form of Jupiter filled the viewport behind his desk. Do you have any idea what you've done? Harrison asked, his voice deceptively calm. The Nyxteri will see this as kidnapping. We're still rebuilding from the last war, and you might have just started another one. Sarah stood at attention, her neural implants recording everything for her personal log. With respect, sir, I found an intelligent being abandoned to die. The Nyxteri left one of their own to freeze to death on our doorstep. That makes it our business. Their culture, their rules, Harrison countered. We don't interfere with their internal affairs. That's part of the treaty. The treaty also prohibits Nyxteri presence on Europa, Sarah pointed out. They broke that first. Sir, there's more going on here than a simple cultural practice. Kovex was the keeper of historical resonances. That's like their version of a master historian. Harrison's eyes narrowed. And how do you know that? Because while you were drafting your reprimand, I was talking to them. Sarah's augmented eyes met his. The Nyxteri don't just discard their elders, Colonel. They're hiding something, and Kovex knows what it is. Before Harrison could respond, Lieutenant Torres's voice came through the intercom. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the Nixterry High Command." The air seemed to crystallize with tension. Harrison gestured to the communications display, and a face appeared, if you could call it that. High Commander Zixtel's crystalline features caught the light like a prism, but there was nothing beautiful about the cold intensity radiating from their faceted eyes. "Colonel Harrison," the translated voice hummed with barely contained fury, "you are harboring a discarded one. This is unacceptable." "High Commander," Harrison began diplomatically, "we found one of your people abandoned on our territory. The one you found has been judged by our laws." Zixtel interrupted. "They are no longer of the collective. Return them immediately, or there will be consequences." Sarah stepped forward, unable to contain herself. "They have a name. Kavex, keeper of historical resonances, and they're under my protection." The crystalline face turned toward her, and Sarah felt the temperature in the room drop. "Ah, Commander Chen, the one who interferes. You do not understand our ways. The Keeper's time has passed. Their knowledge is no longer required." "Knowledge doesn't expire," Sarah countered, "and neither do people's rights to live." "Sarah," Harrison mourned, but she continued. "Kavex was left to die less than 3 kilometers from a human outpost. That's not a coincidence. You wanted us to find them, didn't you? But something went wrong. They weren't supposed to survive long enough to talk to us." The High Commander's internal light pulsed with what Sarah's neural implants interpreted as alarm. "You overstep, human. Return the discarded one, or the peace between our peoples ends." The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving the office in tense silence. Harrison turned to Sarah, his expression unreadable. "You just accused their high command of attempted murder." "Yes, sir, because that's exactly what this is." Sarah pulled up a holographic display from her neural interface. Kavex's internal resonance patterns, their equivalent of vital signs, showed signs of crystalline degradation consistent with poison, not age. Someone wanted them dead before they could reach us. To hide what? I don't know yet, but Kavex mentioned something about deep songs, ancient records that contradict the current Nixterry leadership's claims about their history, about their first contact with humans. Harrison sank into his chair, suddenly looking every bit his age. "Do you remember the way the war ended, Commander? How suddenly the Nixterry sued for peace? Everyone remembers. It was called the Miracle of Titan. What if it wasn't a miracle?" Harrison's voice was quiet. "What if something in those deep songs proves the war was based on a lie?" Before Sarah could respond, Torres burst into the office. "Commander, Colonel, something's wrong in Medical Bay 2. Kavex's crystalline structure is destabilizing." Sarah was moving before Torres finished speaking, her mind racing. The Nixterry transmission. It must have carried some kind of resonant frequency targeted at Kavex's weakened form. She reached the medical bay to find the alien elder's body emitting an alarming harmonic hum. "Get out," she ordered the medical team. The frequency could shatter human bone. She adjusted her neural shielding and approached Kavex, whose faceted surface was beginning to crack. "Sarah," Kavex's voice was distorted, "the deep songs must survive. The truth about the war." "Save your strength," Sarah began, but Kavex's crystalline hand gripped her arm. "No time. They will come. But first, you must understand. Let me share the song." Before Sarah could protest, Kavex pressed their forehead against hers. In that moment, her neural implants exploded with information, not data, but music, history, truth, all encoded in crystalline harmonies that bypassed language entirely. As the ancient knowledge flooded her mind, Sarah understood why the Nixterry High Command wanted Kavex dead. The truth in those deep songs wouldn't just change history, it would reshape the future of both their species. And now she carried that truth in her augmented human mind, where no crystalline poison could erase it. Sarah held Kavex as their light began to fade, knowing that the real battle, the one for truth, justice, and the right of all beings to live with dignity, was just beginning. The Nixteri High Command had made a crucial mistake. They'd assumed that human compassion was a weakness. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. The Elder's wisdom. Sarah's consciousness swam in an ocean of crystalline memories. The deep songs Kvex had shared weren't just historical records. They were the living memory of an entire civilization, encoded in complex harmonics that her neural implants struggled to process. As the medical team worked to stabilize Kvex's failing body, Sarah began to understand the terrible weight of the truth she now carried. "Their whole history is a lie," she whispered, her augmented eyes unfocused as she sifted through the ancient memories. The war. It wasn't about territory or resources. It was about control. Dr. Maya Patel, the station's chief medical officer, looked up from her instruments. "Commander, your neural patterns are off the charts. Whatever Kvex shared with you, it's putting tremendous strain on your implants." But Sarah barely heard her. In her mind's eye, she watched the true history of the Nixteri unfold. Their civilization hadn't always been the rigid, hierarchical structure it was now. Once, they had been explorers, philosophers, artists, their crystalline bodies resonating with songs of discovery and creation. The elders had been revered, not discarded, their accumulated wisdom forming the backbone of their society. It was a coup, Sarah continued, pieces falling into place. 500 years ago, a militant faction called the Symmetrists took control. They rewrote the deep songs, erased their own history. But some elders, the keepers like Kvex, they preserved the truth in hidden harmonies. Colonel Harrison stood in the doorway, his expression grim. "And the war with humanity. We didn't start it." Sarah turned to him, her neural displays projecting fragments of the memories. "The Symmetrists did. They needed an enemy to maintain control, to justify their power. First contact with humanity was peaceful. There were even early treaties, cultural exchanges. But the Symmetrists destroyed those records and engineered attacks on their own colonies, blaming humans." Kvex's crystalline form pulsed weakly on the medical bed. "The song must spread," they hummed. "Our people must remember." Dr. Patel's instruments chimed in alarm. "Their harmonic resonance is failing. The poison is reaching their core matrix." Sarah moved to Kvex's side, taking their hand. The contact sent new waves of information coursing through her neural network. "There's more, isn't there? Something about why they sued for peace so suddenly." Kvex's faceted eyes fixed on her. The young ones began to remember. Despite the Symmetrists' control, the old songs started to resurface. "When your kind showed mercy to our wounded, protected our civilians," it awakened memories. The Symmetrists feared their control would shatter. "So they ended the war," Harrison concluded. "Better to maintain power through peace than lose it through remembered truth." A new alarm blared, a proximity warning. Lieutenant Torres's voice came through the intercom. "Commander, Colonel, 3 Nixteri warships just dropped out of FTL. They're demanding we surrender Kvex and you, Commander Chen. They say you've been infected with dangerous propaganda." Sarah laughed despite herself. "Propaganda? I'm carrying their entire true history in my head." She turned to Harrison. "Sir, we can't let this truth die. The Nixteri people deserve to know who they really are." Harrison studied her for a long moment. "The treaty requires we comply with their demands. If we refuse, we risk restarting the war." "The treaty was built on lies," Sarah countered. "But we can build something better on truth. Kvex didn't just give me their history. They shared coordinates. There are others, hidden enclaves of elders preserving the deep songs. If we can reach them, broadcast the truth." "You're talking about inciting a revolution in an alien society," Harrison warned. "No," Kvex's voice rang with sudden strength. "Not revolution. Remembrance. Our people need only remember who they were, to see who they could be again." The deck vibrated as the Nixteri ships moved into attack position. Sarah's neural implants projected possible scenarios, none of them good. They were outgunned, outmatched. But then she remembered something from Kavex's memories. The Nyx-Terry ships weren't just machines. They were grown from the same crystalline materials as their pilots, capable of resonating with the deep songs. Dr. Patel. Sarah turned to the medical officer. How strong a harmonic pulse can we generate from your equipment? Strong enough to shake this station apart, if we remove the safety protocols. Why? A smile spread across Sarah's face. Because we're going to remind those ships who they really are. She connected her neural interface to the medical systems, preparing to broadcast Kavex's memories. The symmetrists tried to bury their people's true nature under lies and control. But you can't change what something truly is. Not a person, not a civilization. The ships will fire the moment we try anything, Harrison pointed out. No, Sarah's augmented eyes gleamed. They won't. Because deep down, encoded in the very crystalline structure of those ships, is the truth. And truth, like humanity's compassion, isn't a weakness. It's the strongest force in the universe. As the Nyx-Terry ultimatum counted down, Sarah took Kavex's hand one final time. Together, human and alien, they prepared to broadcast a song of remembrance that would change both their civilizations forever. Because sometimes the most powerful weapons weren't the ones that destroyed, but the ones that reminded people of who they truly were. And as the harmonics began to build, Sarah understood that this was why humanity had survived and thrived among the stars. Not because they were stronger or smarter, but because they never stopped believing in the power of truth, compassion, and the fundamental right of all beings to be who they were meant to be. The song was about to begin. Defying two worlds. The first notes of the deep song rippled through space like waves in a crystalline sea. Sarah's neural implants translated the ancient harmonics into pure data, broadcasting them through the station's modified medical equipment. The frequency built slowly, each wave carrying centuries of forgotten truth. Energy signatures changing in the Nyx-Terry ships, Torres reported, his voice tense. Their crystalline matrices are resonating with our transmission. Through the observation window, Sarah watched as the warships began to glow with an inner light she recognized from Kavex's memories. The original luminescence of their species, untainted by symmetrist control. The ships themselves were remembering. Warning shot fired, Torres announced, but his console told a different story. No. Wait. The blast just dissipated. Their weapons are rejecting targeting solutions. Kavex's voice was weak but triumphant. The ships remember what they were grown to be. Not weapons, but vessels of exploration and discovery. The station's communications array suddenly lit up with incoming transmissions, not from the warship's commanders, but from their crews. The deep songs were awakening memories buried in their crystalline structures, passed down through generations of careful growth and cultivation. This is impossible. One Nyx-Terry voice rang through, its translator struggling with the emotion. These harmonics, they're from the time of songs. My grandmother's grandmother spoke of them in secret. Another voice. The ships, they're singing back. How can we fire on those who remind us of our true selves? Sarah's neural displays were overwhelmed with data as more and more Nyx-Terry began to remember. But amid the chaos, a new transmission cut through. High Commander Zixtel, their voice practically vibrating with rage. What have you done, human? These corrupted harmonics are a weapon designed to destabilize our society. Your station will be destroyed for this act of war. But when Zixtel gave the order to fire, nothing happened. The crews of all three ships had stopped responding to commands. Sarah opened a channel to all vessels. This isn't corruption, High Commander. These are your people's true memories, preserved by the elders you try to erase. Your own ships recognize the truth in their crystalline bones. Our society is built on order, on strength. Zixtel rage. These remembered weaknesses would destroy everything we've built. Look at your own history, Sarah countered, projecting memories of ancient Nyx-Terry achievements. vast crystal cities that sang with knowledge, peaceful first contact with a dozen species, scientific discoveries that had revolutionized space travel. This is what your people built before the symmetrists took control. This is who you really are. Dr. Patel's instruments suddenly screamed in alarm. Kavex's life signs were failing, the poison finally reaching their core. But the elder's voice remained strong as they addressed their people one last time. My children, my children's children, remember the songs of peace, of discovery, of wisdom cherished and passed down. Remember who we were and who we can be again. As Kavex's light began to fade, something extraordinary happened. The Nixteri ships, their crystalline structures now fully resonating with the ancient harmonics, began to sing back, not with weapons or threats, but with the deep songs of their own, adding their voices to the Elder's final message. More ships began appearing, smaller vessels emerging from hiding, the hidden enclaves of elders Kavex had spoken of, drawn by the songs of truth echoing through space. Each arrival added new harmonics to the growing chorus, centuries of preserved memory flooding back into the collective consciousness of their people. Colonel Harrison watched in awe as the space around Europa Station became a symphony of crystalline light. They're not just remembering, he realized. They're choosing. Each ship, each crew member, they're actively choosing truth over control. Sarah smiled, even as tears rolled down her face for the fading Kovacs. That's what the symmetrists never understood. You can't force people to forget who they are forever. Not humans, not Nixteri, not anyone. The truth doesn't break people, it sets them free. High Commander Zixtel's ship hung silent among its singing brethren, its crew joining the chorus of remembrance one by one. The symmetrist leader's final transmission was almost lost in the harmony. You've destroyed everything. No, Sarah replied, Kavex's hand growing cold in hers as the elder's light finally dimmed. We've reminded everyone who they really are. What happens next is up to them. As Kavex's consciousness faded, one final deep song transferred to Sarah's neural matrix. Not a memory, but a hope. A vision of humans and Nixteri working together openly, sharing knowledge, building a future based on truth and mutual understanding. The songs will live on, Sarah promised the dying elder. Not just in memories or records, but in the choices your people make from this day forward. You've given them back their past, and with it, the freedom to choose their future. Kavex's final words hummed through the station. They will need guides, teachers who remember, both the songs and silence. Will you? Yes, Sarah answered without hesitation. We'll help them rebuild, not as saviors or conquerors, but as friends who understand the value of remembering who you truly are. The elder's light faded completely, but the songs continued. Ship after ship, crew after crew, the truth spread through the Nixteri fleet like crystal growing in sunlight. The war that truth would unleash against centuries of lies was just beginning, but as Sarah looked out at the glowing ships, she knew humanity would stand with their crystalline allies every step of the way. Because that's what humans did best. They helped others remember who they were meant to be, even if that meant defying two worlds to do it. Legacy of Compassion. 6 months after Kavex's final song, Europa Station had changed beyond recognition. The once military outpost had become a nexus of cultural exchange, its corridors resonating with both human voices and Nixteri harmonics. Sarah Chen stood in what had once been Medical Bay 2, now transformed into a memorial hall of songs, where Kavex's crystalline form had been preserved as a reminder of the power of truth and compassion. The latest numbers from the Transitional Council are encouraging. Torres reported, his station now decorated with growing crystal formations, a gift from the Nixteri engineers he worked with daily. Over 70% of their colonies have rejected symmetrist control. The old songs are spreading faster than anyone predicted. Sarah nodded, her neural implants humming with the countless harmonics she'd learned to interpret over the past months. Kavex's memories, their history, their hopes, All of it lived on in her augmented mind, shared freely with any Nixteri who sought to remember their true heritage. Commander Chen, a crystalline voice chimed. Young Vexera, one of the first Nixteri to openly defy the symmetrists, approached with the characteristic glow of their species youth. The human delegation has arrived from Earth. They're uncertain about our proposal. Sarah smiled. They always are, at first. Change isn't easy for any species. She turned to the window, where Jupiter's eternal storms still rage. But they'll understand when they hear the songs themselves. The proposal was ambitious. A joint human Nixteri Academy of Historical Resonance, built on the very spot where Kvex had chosen to share their final truth. A place where both species could learn from each other's histories, mistakes, and triumphs. High Commander Zixtel's trial begins tomorrow, Torres reminded her. The Council wants you to testify. Sarah shook her head. No, the Nixteri need to handle this themselves. Our role isn't to judge their past, but to help build their future. She touched the crystalline wall, feeling the subtle vibrations of the station's new growth. Besides, there are more important things happening here. As if on cue, a group of human children ran past the memorial hall's entrance, their laughter mixing with the harmonious chimes of young Nixteri. In the months since the change, the first cross-species friendships had begun to form naturally, untainted by centuries of propaganda and fear. They said it was impossible, Vexera observed, their faceted eyes tracking the playing children, that our species were too different, that peace could never last. Impossible is human specialty, Sarah replied with a grin. But this isn't just about human determination or Nixteri wisdom. It's about something more fundamental, the universal right of all beings to know their own truth, to be who they really are. A soft chime indicated an incoming transmission. The holographic display showed a familiar sight, one of the hidden enclaves of elders, this one located deep in the Kuiper Belt. More and more of these sanctuaries were revealing themselves each day, each one carrying their own preserved songs of history and knowledge. The archives are ready, the elder announced, their ancient form glowing with renewed purpose. We would be honored if you would help us share them with both our peoples. Sarah's neural implants automatically began preparing for the data transfer, but she took a moment to study the scene around her. The memorial hall was filling with both humans and Nixteri, drawn by the promise of new songs, new understanding. Among them were scientists, diplomats, teachers, and children, all eager to learn, to grow, to build something new together. Kvex once told me that the deep songs weren't just about the past. She addressed the gathering. They're about possibility, the endless potential that exists when beings choose to remember who they are and what they can become. She placed her hand on the preserved crystalline form of her friend, the elder who had dared to share truth even at the cost of their life. The crystal hummed with residual harmonics, a final echo of Kvex's wisdom. We stand here today, not as separate species, not as former enemies, but as inheritors of a profound legacy. A legacy built not on power or control, but on compassion. The simple human choice to help someone in need, and the incredible Nixteri courage to remember who they truly were. The archives began their transmission, new songs of ancient knowledge flowing through the station's crystal-enhanced networks. But more beautiful than the historical records was the sight before her. Humans and Nixteri working together, learning together, growing together. This is how we honor Kvex's sacrifice, Sarah continued, her voice carrying the harmonic overtones she'd learned from months of sharing songs. Not by dwelling in the past, but by building a future neither of our species could have imagined alone. As if in response, the station's crystalline growths pulsed with light, their resonance harmonizing with the hopes and dreams of all those gathered. The legacy of a single act of compassion had grown into something far greater, a new way forward for both civilizations. And in the depths of space, across the solar system and beyond, the songs continued to spread. Truth, once remembered, could never be forgotten again. The future that Cavex had glimpsed in their final moments was becoming reality, one shared story at a time. For that was humanity's greatest gift to the universe, not their technology or their determination, but their fundamental belief that everyone, no matter their form or origin, deserved the chance to be who they truly were. And in return, the Nyx Terrae had given humanity something equally precious, the understanding that the truest songs were those sung together. The impossible had become inevitable, all because one human commander had refused to walk away from a dying elder. In the end, that was all it took to change two worlds, a simple choice to care, to help, to remember. And the songs would echo through the stars forever.